go!
Let's get back to Team Talk on ESPN Radio 1017, The Team. We are taking your calls at 994-1017. That's 994-1017. Now, Team Talk on ESPN Radio 1017, The Team.
Welcome back to Team Talk on ESPN Radio 1017, The Team. We are now being joined by Jeff Passan. He writes for ESPN.com. He's written a really good cover story called Bringing Joy Back to Baseball. It's a profile on the San Diego Padres shortstop Fernando Tatis Jr. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us here in Albuquerque. Appreciate your time.
The home of Alex Bregman and Matt Moore. I love it.
That's right. That's right. Yes. Not to mention Mitch Garver. I was looking at my notes. Mitch Garver, great player, off to a great start, I should say, as a player with the Minnesota Twins, too. So you can add him to the list as well. Mitchell Garver, Minnesota Twins, played at the University of New Mexico, played high school baseball here in Albuquerque. So there you go, Jeff. But appreciate the shout out to Alex and Matt Moore for sure. And you went actually to the Dominican Republic to start this profile on Tatis Jr. And that was in December. And then you found out what everything is going on with him in July. So I thought it was a really good piece.
Thank you. It was supposed to run in April, and then coronavirus happened. And it was supposed to run the first Monday of the season, and then the Miami Marlins happened, and we weren't even sure if there was going to be a season. But
yeah,
the timing ended up being very good on it because Fernando Tatis Jr. has arguably been the best player in baseball this season.
Well, even up to the moment, I can say that because we're a Los Angeles Dodgers affiliate, Jeff. And, of course, the Dodgers fell to the Padres last night 6-2. And Tatis Jr., 2 for 5. Manny Machado hit a grand slam, so that was the big play. But anyway, Tatis Jr., 2 for 5. He's now hitting .333. He's over 40% of his on-base percentage, and he's slugging at .750. Unbelievable numbers for a 21-year-old especially.
Yeah, and, it's not just the numbers offensively with him, which are clearly great. It's the defense. It's the base running. It's the excitement that he brings to a game that doesn't typically have a lot of excitement. And that's really what stands out about him. The headline is bringing the joy back to baseball, and he's really an embodiment of that. And baseball is a sport that has a tough time, especially with the younger generation getting a toehold. And for a guy like Tatis to emerge at as young of an age as he has is one of the very many things that makes him so impressive.
Yeah, and his love for the game started way back because you mentioned him sustaining a really bad injury as an 8-year-old, broke his femur, and the first thing he wanted to know, it was in a full-length cast, and the first thing he wanted to know was when he could get back to playing baseball. And, then you tied in the whole thing with him and his dad who, hit 33 or 32 or 33 home runs with the Cardinals the year that he was born. It's got all kinds of twists and turns to it. But, again, the joy that he brings to each and every day is what stands out.
Yeah, and baseball needs that. I mean, just to sell everyone on the game these days, which can admittedly be boring at times and can be slow. And, I think I saw a stat yesterday from Baseball Reference that it's on average 3 minutes and 40 seconds between action in baseball, a number that's risen, 20% over the last decade or so.
Wow.
As prevalent as strikeouts are now, it's become such a big part of the game that anytime you see some action, it's like a blessing. And the beauty of Tatis is that on any given night he can do something that you just haven't seen before, whether it's these majestic home runs that he's hitting and the trots that he has and the bat flips and the play defensively and what he does on the base pass. I mean, what sold me on him It wasn't just the bat; it was what he can do in the field, and it was him tagging up on a pop up to second base. It was I think it was 165 feet that his teammate then Hunter Renfroe hit the ball, and Kevin Newman, the Pittsburgh Pirates second baseman, caught it,
right,
and almost double clutched because he's like, there's no way that this guy has the audacity to tag up and try and score from third base. But he did, and he was called out at the plate, and they reviewed it in replay, and he had slid around the catcher and swiped the plate with his left hand. It was one of those plays where you see it and you're like, no freaking way. And you can't say no freaking way about Fernando Tatis Jr. because he makes a way.
Yeah, the way you're talking about, like, it's like almost kind of like reckless abandon. You almost like see Willie Mays, like, going with his head shaking. It's just like neat to see that kind of thing. He's a big guy. People better realize not only, the speed and all the defensive skills he has, 6'2", 200 pounds. So, man, baseball needs those kind of athletes, like you said.
Yeah, he's actually 6'4".
Oh, sorry, 6'4", 200. My
yeah,
bad.
No, it's understandable. You don't think of a guy who's playing shortstop being 6'4",
okay,
and weighing as much as he does and being as strong as he is. He reminds me. I don't like making this comparison, but I have to because it's just true. He reminds me a lot of Alex Rodriguez, just in the tool set that he has. And to compare someone who finished his career with 696 home runs, I understand the performance-enhancing drugs certainly helps with that. But to see a guy as talented as he is, playing the position that he is as well as he is part of what makes Tatis so great.
No, and you honed in on this earlier, too, is, just don't get overwhelmed by his offensive stats. Like the glove work, just like with Alex Rodriguez, people realize, he was a great defensive player, especially when he was very young. Like the defense also, man, is providing highlights along with all the other stuff he's doing.
Yeah, and seeing Tatis move out there, when you're a guy of that size, and Manny Machado was like this as well.
Yeah.
He came up as a shortstop. He wound up at third base because at the time the Orioles had J.J. Hardy, who was an excellent defensive shortstop in his own right, but Manny Machado, especially when Orioles shortstops were injured, would slide over to shortstop and was fantastic there. There were always questions about that, though, because of his size. You just typically see a guy who's 6'4", 200 pounds like Tatis move off a shortstop and go over to third base just because the amount of ground that you have to cover at shortstop is so substantial. But he doesn't just go front to back. He goes side to side, and he goes up and down. And I think my favorite play that he made defensively, Jesus Aguilar hit a line drive that would have been over every other shortstop's head. Tatis loaded his legs, jumped up in the air, perfect timing, snagged the ball, came down after a 180, just made it look so pretty. And that's what he does. He just makes baseball look beautiful. And it's a sport that is a lot of brute force. We're not talking football or hockey here, but there's a very physical element to it more than a graceful one, and the grace that he brings to the position and to the game is pretty unique. Well,
we're talking with Jeff Passan on the Daniels Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Cool Take Hotline. He's a writer for ESPN.com. Wrote the cover story, Bringing Joy Back to Baseball. It's a profile on San Diego Padre shortstop Fernando Tatis Jr. Got to ask you, since we have you, Jeff, Charlie Blackmon. I happen to flip over to the Diamondbacks broadcast, which we get here locally, and he was up in like the fourth inning for the second time, and they were saying that, they did a stat that, he's got to hit like 367 the rest of the year to bat 400 or whatever, and then he rips another line drive, so he was 2 for 2 in the fourth inning, and Bob Brenly goes, they better start checking the stat to see what it's going to take to hit 500. But anyway, one way or the other, and a phenomenal start for Charlie Blackmon. And, put it in perspective, your thoughts on the odds of him getting to 400, not 500, obviously, but to 400, and how it would match up with things historically, Jeff.
Well, here we are, more than a quarter of the way into the season, and he is hitting 500, which is a very rare thing to be doing.
Right.
This deep, and I say this deep into the season, I mean 17 games into it. I think when it's all said and done, Charlie Blackmon will not hit 400 this year. That's just the likelihood and law of averages and in baseball being baseball, but what he's done so far and what the Rockies have done so far is awfully impressive. And anytime someone is doing something as magnificent as going 34 for 68 against the quality of pitching that there is these days is great. And I think the best thing that he's got going for him in his pursuit of that is that it's not like he's going to be facing pitchers that he hasn't seen this year.
No.
Because of the way that the schedule is oriented, with National League West teams playing only NL West and AL West teams, he's going to see the same guys again and again. There's going to be that familiarity there, and that familiarity breeds comfort, and that comfort could lead to us seeing history and having the discussion of whether a guy hitting 400 in a truncated season like this is actually tantamount to doing what Ted Williams did back in the 1940s, hitting 406.
But again, it's given us something to talk about, and the sport needs as many things as there is to talk about. And again, that's kind of what you were saying, was so excited about the whole Fernando Tatis Jr. Okay, real quickly, Jeff, when we were promoting the fact that you were going to be on, I got with my webmaster and said, hey, we're going to have Jeff Passan on today, 420 Mountain, blah, 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 to get it tweeted out. And he right away is like, oh, my gosh, man. I've got his book, The Arm, and I just, love reading his stuff. So I got to ask him, how do you think this shortened season will impact the arms across Major League Baseball?
It already has. I think Alvin Gonzalez, my teammate at ESPN, tweeted out yesterday, maybe the day before, that there have been 54 non-COVID related injury list stints for pitchers so far. I think over the first 18 days of the last 2 years, those numbers were something like 24 and 19. So obviously it has had a huge impact, and it was expected, but I don't think this much pain was expected, and pitchers are scared, and they have every right to be. This is not a normal year by any stretch of the imagination, and the ramp up that they are typically used to, they simply could not have because of the coronavirus. And listen, every time a pitcher goes down with an arm injury, it breaks my heart, because I know that these sorts of things can be prevented. Unfortunately, even after spending 4 years writing a book on the arm, I don't know what the answer is to prevent it. And until we figure that out, you're going to see more dynamic players lost to arm injuries, and the saddest part of the sport.
Yeah, and the book again, The Arm, Inside the $1 Billion Mystery of the Most Valuable Commodity in Sports. You can also read his stuff on ESPN.com. He's Jeff Passan, and thanks so much, and appreciate you, letting us know a little bit more about Tatis Jr. and also, a little bit more about baseball in general. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure. It's great talking with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, Jeff Passan here on ESPN Radio 101.7 The Team Talk. We'll be back with more next on ESPN Radio 101.7 The Team.